been a while. I first heard about Pokemon when I was about 2 years old. My sister at the time watched it. She was into Pokemon and she was like into Sailor Moon as well. Now 2-year-old me, I was like, what is this shit? Well, I wouldn't have said shit. I would have been two. I would be like, I want to watch Teletubbies, and my sister was like, Evan, it's this new thing called Pokemon. Wouldn't be until a few years later when Pokemon Forever came out in 2002 for us, because it came out in 2001 for Japan. So then that was about I was about 5 years old, and honestly, Ash Ketchum was the very first idea for me for what I think a hero should be. We had the Gen 1 games, Red, Blue, Yellow. We had Gold, Silver, Crystal, Gen 2. But I like really got into the games and also like actually playing them, not just watching the show and the movies, through Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. We used to go down to visit family, and some of the cousins that we had an N64 with at least Stadium 1. I know they at least had Stadium 1. So then, of course, my mind was blown when I was like, they have there's a Stadium 2? I was like, okay, for reference, the GameCube had either just come out or was about to come out, or was already out for a bit. But I know that like one of the Christmases in the early 2000s, mom was able to find a Nintendo 64, not a GameCube, a 64, and then she got me Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. That was a core memory. Absolutely core memory. In terms of mainline Pokemon games that I myself like personally owned and would really play through, even though I played parts of the first two through my sister as well, Pokemon Ruby was my very first like mainline game. I would typically for a while I'd get one, my sister would get the other. So I got Ruby and Leaf Green. She got Sapphire and Fire Red. Trico is always my starter. Have experimented with Torchic and Mudkip, but like in terms of any other playthrough, Trico is my starter. Sceptile is just cool, man. For starters in other games, I rotate between like all three of the Kanto starters, and I always choose Chikorita for Johto. Another thing that was a really big like moment for me as a kid was seeing Pokemon Coliseum's US commercial for the first time. I was like, "Oh my god, it's just like Pokemon Stadium. It's in 3D." And then like it had story mode. And I remember the commercial was like, "They will not take our Pokemon." And it was like these people are going so out of their way over the shadow Pokemon. I know like of course now it was an ad campaign, a marketing campaign to stick with you, and it did stick for me. And I also remember that Coliseum was the very first Pokemon game, not just Pokemon game, but video game I ever pre-ordered. Coliseum still holds a really special place to my heart. Even throughout some of its quirks, I still think it's a wonderful, wonderful game, and I hope more people get to experience it when it does come to the GameCube online for the Nintendo Switch, or like the GameCube Classics. I remember being especially addicted to Pokemon Leaf Green. I think I had more hours in that than I did Ruby. I remember so many like long car rides in like down to vacation, up to vacation, anything like that. And I would always just like fixate on Leaf Green. I remember being so immersed in especially like the post game, the Sevi Isles. I was just like, whoa, this wasn't here in the originals. It's so cool. Since I got into the series through the anime, I was always like an avid anime watcher. This was when it was still kind of like on Kids WB, and it was also bouncing back and forth between that and Cartoon Network. I honestly, to this day, I go back and forth on do I like the video games more, the Game Freak developed ones, or do I like the anime more? You know? Like I said, always loved Ash. I was never one of the people that's like, oh, he sucks. He doesn't evolve his Pokemon. He's not catching them all. Why doesn't he win the league? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I always, I always liked him. I thought he was just neat. So when I got on the internet and like when I was young is when I started getting on the internet, like mid 2000s, and I saw like that he was not very popular at the time. I was like, little me was so taken aback. But it's just part and parcel of seeing other people's perspectives as a kid, and especially like through the World Wide Web as it was really starting to grow. Pokemon Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, the eighth movie, was by extension the first movie I ever pre-ordered. I remember we were on vacation at the time, and I think it was like an aunt or a family friend. She had a computer, and of course, it's the old box ones, your old kind of, not Apple, but definitely probably like a Macintosh. Apple is Macintosh. Am I stupid? I got onto the Pokemon website, and I saw that they announced Lucario and the Mystery of Mew and that special DVD that it came with. You know the one. It's the little fold out. If I could pull it out, I would. but it's the fold out one that comes with the Lucario movie, and then the mastermind of Mirage Pokemon. What a special that was. What a special that was. Sticking in Gen 3, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness was the very first game I had ever gotten ahead of release. Like I ever broke the street date for. I think this is when Nintendo was still releasing games on Tuesday. You know, Pokemon is still kind of colloquially Nintendo. They hold a third of the shares for that, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know if that's fully true, but like, Nintendo is the umbrella, okay? But I remember Nintendo games I still think were coming out on Tuesdays back in the mid-2000s. And I pre-ordered mine at Best Buy. I think it was on a Sunday. Dad pulled me over. It was like 7 or 8 p.m. How do I know the time for that? He pulled me aside. He was like, Evan, I got a call from Best Buy today. They said that the game came in early. And I was like, oh, does that mean we can maybe go tomorrow? And then he does the thing where... And then he surprised me with it. I remember pretty much crying. I was so appreciative. And then, of course, I had school the next day, but I was like, for like the last hour that I'm allowed up, I'm just going to play this. And as a result, XD Gale of Darkness also has a very special place in my heart. I'm telling you, man, bring back Genius Sonority from the mobile game minds. I miss them so much. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, for me, and I guess kids my age, was a wild time to be a Pokemon fan. You know how we all have those sorts of playground rumors, the whole, oh, Mew under the truck, or Mew 3, or like just all of those crazy, like, you can get Sonic and Tails in Super Smash Bros. Melee, or you can get Toad in Melee, Luigi is real in Mario 64, or that kind of thing. I feel like Pokemon Diamond and Pearl in specific was the last sort of game set that really had those like playground rumors that were like really popular. I remember finding out things about like the videos that were like how to get Arceus and Darkrai and Shaman and Cresselia. Honestly, finding out about the Azure Flute in 2007 felt like accessing forbidden knowledge. I felt like I was going to be put on a list. I mean, with the Pokemon Company, you never know. I started out with Turtwig, and then my first playthrough, I couldn't beat it. I was stuck at the Elite Four. I'd get maybe past Bertha if I was lucky, but like, of course, I was a kid. I was not great at building teams. So then the next time afterwards, I restarted my file, and I started with Chimchar. Now I'm a Chimchar Chad. I love Infernape. I love monkeys. I don't know if I've really clarified that in videos, but love monkeys and apes of all kind. I would not be caught dead using Piplup. Pokemon Platinum came out when I was in middle school. Diamond and Pearl were the last ones that came out when I was still in elementary. Platinum was in middle school. I remember one of my semi-local GameStops was having a tournament there. Whoever won in the battle of like the Diamond and Pearl not link battles, but the wireless battles, they'd get a free copy of Platinum. It was just me and one other kid. The other kid won, so he got the free copy, but I had mine on pre-order, so I still got a copy nonetheless. If we're speaking about like Gen 4 experiences, I have especially fond memories of going to Toys R Us to get the Darkrai mystery gift with some friends. Now, for all you youngins out there, really quickly, back in the day, you didn't get Pokemon through like the wireless or like the Nintendo online, anything like that. You had to go to a Toys R Us or like the Pokemon Center when it was still the Pokemon Center in New York. It's the Nintendo store now. And you had to take your game, your DS or your Game Boy Advanced, your cartridge, so your respective game of choice, and then they would send one of the service representatives or people working there would send the Pokemon to you through like a special cartridge that some of them go for a pretty penny on like the on eBay. That's how they would handle it back in the day. It wasn't just connect to the internet, download, you get a Pokemon with perfect stats, shiny, perfect IVs, perfect held item kind of thing. It was, you had to go to the store and get it through, you'd have to talk to people, of course. I remember they'd also hand out like those code cards. That was like a weird period in between. They did it a lot for the 3DS era, or they'd just be like, here, scratch off the code, enter that into the 3DS's like mystery gift, you get your Pokemon. I remember this one in specific, the Darkrai one for the 10th movie, because it was me and two other friends. We all got our Darkrai's, and then we all got our copies of The Rise of Darkrai, which had just come out on DVD, and then we went back to my house to watch it. I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion, but I really, really miss that kind of sense of community. I know that for like several years they've found a better way to distribute or transfer special Pokemon, of course online, but I don't know, just going to your local GameStop, Toys R Us, CB Games, anything like that, and just be like, hey man, you here for the Regigigas? Yeah, man. It was so cool, you know? When Heart Gold and Soul Silver were announced, if we're still on Gen 4, I damn near shitted myself. Gold and Silver were like crack to me as a kid. I loved playing them. And one of the things that I would do, one of the first things I did when I started to really like use the internet and go on Google was I would just go on Google and look up the fake mock-ups of like the Pokemon. It was one of the most popular ones was Pokemon Dust Gold and Pokemon Dawn Silver. Oof, if you remember any of this stuff, then you deserve a veteran's discount. Stuff like that was like, I could not get enough of it. Just the sliver, the idea of a Gold and Silver remake being real brightened my eyes. And then that 2009, 2010, they finally came out. They're still the best remakes, by the way. My inbox is closed on this. My summer 2010 vacation literally consisted of, we went to vacation a few times, of course, beaches and whatnot. I was never a big beach guy. My time there, when it wasn't at the beach, consisted of staying in the hotel room, playing Pokemon Soul Silver version, and watching like those really early uploads of the Sinnoh League arc from the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl anime. You know, the ones where it'd be like right after the episode aired on like early Thursday or Friday morning, and people would upload them, sometimes with subtitles, onto YouTube before like TV Tokyo struck them down. Ooh, those were the days. Back in my day, we watched anime in 3 parts in 240p with Spanish subtitles. I'm not crazy! As an almost 29-year-old, I'm still chasing the same high I felt when Ash finally beat Paul at the Sinnoh League, and that 4-year rivalry came to a perfect end. Ash lost the next battle because fucking Tobias had a Darkrai and a Latios and a god knows what else, but he took down that Darkrai and that Latios. That was so cool! Listen, when every life meets another life, something will be born. Now, a bit of a controversial take, but I've always loved Gen 5. I know it's not exactly controversial to say today, but back then, ooh, you were burned at the stake if you said you liked Gen 5. Okay, fun fact. Unova lasted less than 3 years outside of Japan. It came to the West and to Europe and Australia in March of 2011, and then X and Y was when they started doing the simultaneous worldwide release in October of 2013. So Japan had Black and White for that era for a little over 3 years. Everywhere else had it for less than 3. Criminal. Disgusting. Black and White were the first Pokemon games also where I bought like both versions. They were still on the DS, of course. They were only like $35 max. So it wasn't too out of the realm of possibility for like 13, 14-year-old Evan to get both copies, you know? Saved up some money. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want. It was also just fun to team build with all the version exclusives and with different starter Pokemon. I usually bounce back between Oshawott and Tepig. Yes, I like Tepig. I'm sorry. I think he's cute, and I think Pignite and Emboar are kind of neat, you know? For once, the people on Twitter and Reddit and YouTube were kind of right. Pokemon Black and White 2 were like the pinnacle of the franchise. It will probably never get better than this. Again, I don't mean to come off as like your average PokeTuber, but it's the truth. You know, I would say debate me. However, my inbox is closed on this permanently, and disagreeing with me on saying Black and White 2 are possibly the best games in the franchise is strictly prohibited. It just kind of did like... I know that everything right is a bit of a generalization, but my god, Black and White 2 are like a love letter, a mastercraft in Pokemon. I also don't care what anyone else says about Pokemon X and Y. I think they're good games. I remember that they came out on a Friday. This is that era when Nintendo released their games on Fridays instead of like Tuesdays or even like Sundays. I beat Pokemon X in less than 2 days. Listen, I was 16 years old. I didn't have a job. I was still in school. I wasn't doing the best in school. So I powered through that shit. X and Y are still good. I know that people point to that as the decline of Pokemon, but I still like them. Shame the Kalos is based off of France, though. Of course, my starter Pokemon was Froakie. Also, I'm going to go on a rant. No Pokemon Company International first partner Pokemon is a fucking stupid name for them. I don't hear anyone calling them that. It's always starter. Like when you try to call the Evolutions VVs. Stop. Like I said, Froakie was my starter. My very first playthrough was of Greninja, Charizard, Lucario, Talonflame, Xerneas. I didn't even have a sixth party member. I was a little insane. You doing all right back there? I think they're just fine. Believe it or not, I actually wasn't huge on Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for the first time. I don't think I even got them at launch. I think I got Alpha Sapphire that Christmas, so 2014. It was the first Pokemon game in a long time that I hadn't bought at launch. Maybe the first Pokemon game that I didn't buy at launch, which is weird to think about. I honestly came around to them. I'm definitely, to an extent, still one of the people who's kinda, sort of tilted that they didn't remake the Battle Frontier. And the interview that they gave in that one, like, the response they gave in that one Italian interview was like, oh, kids are so busy on their phones, they won't have time for post-game content like the Battle Frontier. I know that's kind of like a PR cop-out answer, but hearing that at the time was like, Game Freak Pokemon Company, when I get my hands on you. I will say that they are solid remakes, though. Very solid remakes. Probably the second best ones after Heart Gold, Soul Silver. And I'm a man enough to admit that the first time I heard that recomposition of Respero City, I actually ended up crying. It was one of those things where it's like, I'm home, you know? Sceptile getting a Mega Evolution, that was awesome. Again, it was really exciting to use him again in a team. Yeah. Now, I could go on for hours about the X and Y anime. I could go on for hours about the anime in general. That might be another future video. But it was cool to see Ash as sort of the de facto grown-up of the group. You know, he's kind of always been the kid, of course, like the most kid, because he's only 10 years old, but there's definitely like a change in the group dynamic for each different series. I liked how in Advanced Generation, Ash was kind of like a mentor to May. Like in the second episode, he's like, well, you have to weaken a Pokemon before you catch it. That kind of thing. Little things like that to show that Ash really is growing. And I feel like in the X and Y anime, he commanded a lot of respect and a lot of, I guess, pride. Like Serena, Clement, and Bonnie look up to him. Of course, Serena especially. And it was nice seeing Clement as like kind of a, not a fanboy, but just as a very much like a, he knows that Ash knows his stuff because he's traveled a lot of places in the Pokemon world. Again, just, they look up to Ash, and I think that's pretty cool. It was also very different in terms of a group dynamic. Now, when they announced the Z arc, Pokemon X, Y, and Z, I literally ascended to like another plane of existence. By that point, Greninja was already cemented as my favorite Pokemon. But when they announced Ash Greninja, oh my god. I will never forgive them for, like, annexing Ash Greninja. It's weird they did, but they didn't. Because, of course, they make a big deal out of him in the X, Y, and Z anime. Then they have him fucking lose to Alon in the Kalos League Finals. Still a little salty about that. And then, of course, they have Ash release him, because they can't just, like, oak him. They can't send him back to Professor Oak. Probably not even Professor Sycamore, because that would feel kind of like a slap to the face. And then he comes back for Pokemon Journeys for an episode or two. And when they do the flashbacks, they animate it as, like, base level Greninja versus Mega Charizard X. They don't acknowledge, really, that Ash Greninja even existed. I thought that was the weirdest thing. But then, the intro for, like, the last 11 episodes of Ash's journey, the Aim to be a Pokemon Master episodes, in, like, the compilation, in the intro, they have Ash Greninja there, so it's like, what are you doing? I also know that they brought Greninja back for Scarlet and Violet, of course, and they have the Battle Bond ability, which lets him turn into Ash Greninja, but they changed it so that he doesn't actually transform. He gets a special attack boost. I won. But at what cost? Anyway, enough about that. As you can imagine, Ash losing the Kalos League at the very last second, it was like 15 9/11s for me. On a brighter topic, the Sun and Moon anime is the best that it had been since Diamond and Pearl. Like, Diamond and Pearl, Sun and Moon, a good chunk of X and Y. And, like, I'd say most of X and Y. And especially, like, the latter parts of Advanced Generation, the best that the anime has to offer. I remember the fucking second that the Sun and Moon anime was announced, and people were shitting on it, like reactionaries, all the different YouTube reactions were like, "Oh, it looks like a really shitty Ghibli movie. Its art style is so weird. Its animation is so bad because it's so like cartoonish and kind of floaty." You don't know what you're talking about. Sun and Moon are animated so beautifully. The characters have never been more expressive. You can tell that the people that are working on it were having a lot of fun with it. There are so many little like references and just different faces that the characters never would have made in anything prior to Sun and Moon. And it fits the environment. It fits the story that they were trying to tell. There were maybe one or two bad episodes in the entirety of Sun and Moon, but I even say with that, the entirety of the Gen 7 anime, worth watching. And, of course, you'd have no idea the sort of high that I felt when Ash won the league. I was like, it's about damn time people put respect on his name. Of course, the goalpost moving of like, oh, Alola isn't technically an official league. It's only technically the first one. It's not like this has been an established league in the series before. I see what you're doing. Moving the goalposts. And I don't like it. All right, the games. Sun and Moon had games. Yeah. So, more stories. Sun and Moon came out while I was working at Toys R Us. A rip to that store in the United States, at least. I remember going to a midnight release of it from like a GameStop that was in the area, and then heading right back home because I had a full day of work the next day. Right after work, I just sat my ass down, plopped it in, and it was a really good time. I definitely wouldn't say it's necessarily one of my favorites. It's been a while since I've actually like played through it. I think the last time I booted it up was 2018, 2019? And of course, this is taking into account Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon as well. I need to play through the Alola region again. One of the things that I also really liked was, because I was working at Toys R Us at the same time, of course, that was around the 20th anniversary of Pokemon. My coworker and I, whenever we'd like cross paths and we were like shelving and shifting in the same areas, he'd tell me about like, oh, this totem is really annoying. Oh, this island trial was like really fucking cool. And then he'd be like, dude, watch out for the Ultra Beasts. If they beat your Pokemon, they get a buff to their highest stat. The Beast Balls are only for catching them. Watch out, bro. It was a nice little bonding experience and really helped pass the time during the holiday season at Toys R Us, you know? Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was when I definitely felt my relationship with Pokemon shift. Relationship with Pokemon shifted, is what I should say. I audibly remember saying out loud when I was in college, just looking at the direct on my phone, I was like, what the fuck, Pokemon? I kid you not, it was 364 days in between Sun and Moon's release and Ultra Sun Ultra Moon's release. And they're giving it the fucking platinum treatment. It's not like there's sequels like Black 2 and White 2. It's just, oh, here's roughly the same story, like 80% of it, but with some twists to accommodate Necrozma. And you're doing two versions of that. I was so burnt out on Alola at the time. I definitely feel like it affected my opinion of the games at the time. So I want to go back and play them, and I'll probably have like a better opinion of them, to be honest. Started with Litten because I think Incineroar is the fucking GOAT. I love him, and I will stand for no hate for him. Let's go Pikachu and Eevee were cute. Like, yeah. At least they knew what they wanted to be. They wanted to be very simple Kanto remakes that were meant to bring in people who were exclusively playing Pokemon Go. Nothing more, nothing less. You know, if I had a nickel for every time Game Freak has remade Kanto, I'd have 4 nickels, because technically, you know, Kanto was remade in Gold, Silver, Crystal, and Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Which isn't a lot. But it's weird that it's happened technically 4 times. Sword and Shield was when things, at least for me, really went to shit. That was when it was like settling in, like, oh. Like by the time that Sword and Shield came out, I was 22, so I had known this for quite some time, of course. But that's when it like really settled in, like, oh, Pokemon's just like a corporate nightmare. Regardless of how you feel about it, the Dex cut, I think most of us can agree, was a PR nightmare for the Pokemon Company and Game Freak. It didn't matter that there was no national Dex per se, because there wasn't a national Dex in Sun and Moon and their Ultra counterparts. But the fact that not every Pokemon will be coded into this game and be usable in this game, regardless of if they have a new Pokemon entry or not, was kind of unheard of. At least games where you couldn't obtain Pokemon in the past, they transferred them over so that you could use, technically, all of the Pokemon up to that point if you at least transferred them from another game. the data exists for them, and they're fully playable. As games, I know I posted like an old ass review on my channel, but I definitely think they're like on the bottom rung for me. Sword and Shield, at least to me, they feel like a kind of a parody of Pokemon, if that makes any sense. Like, it feels like the most basic, watered down version of the formula since the original games. I'd say even like Gen 2 has a bit more meat to its story than Gen 8. I played through Gen 8 a few times, and I was pretty thorough with it. And it was just like, hey, here's this story about the Darkest Day and these Pokemon and this like giant Eternatus. But we're not going to show you any of it because we want you to focus on just getting those badges, kiddo. Let the adults handle it. Then, of course, the kids come in and swoop in and save the day anyway. It just felt like it was trying to tell a story that it didn't want to tell. The game itself is ugly, and of course it's littered with problems. I don't want to get too much into here because this is just my experience with Pokemon. But then again, we did get Melanie from Pokemon Sword and Shield. So they can't be all bad. Okay, Infernape, I want Diamond and Pearl remakes.
The Infernape's paw curls its finger.
Be careful what you wish for. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are offensive. They are affronts to God. Even with how much I disliked Sword and Shield, that game at least functioned. But the Pokemon Company pretty much went, please download the latest update patch before playing. Please don't look at our blank-ass title screen and no post-game content and the lacking music. Just please make sure that it's updated to the proper version before you play it. Any other company that would tell its players, hey, update to the latest version of the current patch is kind of fucky, would be crucified. But with Pokemon, it's understandable. Funny enough, it's actually as buggy as the original Diamond and Pearl, because those games were bug-riddled, dude. I still think they're the worst Pokemon games. Legends Arceus is a complete 180 from the rest of Gen 8. It almost saved the entirety of Gen 8 for me. Huge breath of fresh air after the past few games. Listen, when I heard Jubilife Village's music, the remix of Jubilife City, it made me feel like I was home. It was refreshing to see a game that was more focused on filling out the Pokedex than it was battling. Exploring all of Hisui was fun. Honestly, it might be the best Pokemon game on Switch, at least to me. Even better than Legends EA. Ash beating Leon and becoming the strongest trainer in the world in the Journeys anime is something that I'm going to take to my grave. You have no idea how important that was for me. It was one of the best things to wake up to, let me tell you. I was on top of the world. And then Scarlet and Violet happened. It was like 15 9/11. Wait, I've used that analogy. Let's see. It was like when you go into your kind of local Chuck E. Cheese's, and then you find out they removed the animatronics. Yeah, fuck it. I'm just calling it Pokemon 06 now. Pokemon has had its Sonic 06 moment. I don't think we're ever going to live that down. Do you think that, like, Nintendo was shitting themselves when they saw the state that Scarlet and Violet were in? And they were like, you can't release that. That is completely against our MO. And the Pokemon Company was like, the investors, they yearn for a new Pokemon title pretty much yearly. It's an open world game with swaths of empty plains. I can't even make the whole Game Freak hire this man like Unreal Engine 4. Because that would imply it would at least look presentable. It doesn't. There are just, like I said, swaths of empty plains. Ugly empty plains. Ugly empty plains with pop-in and like the weird texture of the model morphing. Like, when you see it, it definitely throws me for a loop because like, oh god, am I losing my sight, my vision? But no, it's just Paldea does that sometimes. Honestly, the last act almost saved it for me. All the Area Zero stuff, I think it might be the best final act in any mainline Game Freak developed Pokemon game. Crazy, right? I was like, I kind of hated playing through a lot of Scarlet and Violet most of the time, but then that final area was just, ooh. Then they had to ruin it by playing Ed fucking Sheeran. You know what's funny? I think the first mod that was publicly posted for like the Switch emulation for Scarlet and Violet was just, it removes the Ed Sheeran song in the credits. What more could you want? Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield are like two opposite ends of the spectrum for me. Sword and Shield has a lot of ideas that to me are uninspired. They're very like, it's very bland, very by the books, but it works. Functionally, it works most of the time. Scarlet and Violet has the better ideas, but it's literally held together with like Elmer's glue and those used staples. The game has crashed on me a couple times. When I first streamed it, like the second stream I did, it fucking crashed on me. I was so defeated. And then like the DLCs even get worse. Oh my god. I know people are like, "Oh, get the Switch 2 versions. They have the improved FPS." Yeah, I agree with that. They're better. Didn't really fix any of the bugs themselves though. Again, it's the whole you can polish a turd, but it's still a turd. Honestly, playing Scarlet and Violet and anything like above 12 FPS feels like sacrilege. When I first got that update patch when the Switch 2 came out, I was like, oh shit, finally Scarlet and Violet and 60 FPS, I can play it. This feels like heresy. I feel like I'm looking at forbidden knowledge that I shouldn't be looking at. This is a sin. I will be honest, I haven't watched Pokemon Horizons. The Ash anime was, like I said in the very beginning, what got me into Pokemon. He's a character that I followed for like over 20 years, and he might be my favorite character in all fictional media. Like on certain days, even more than Sonic. At the same time, the anime ending Ash's tenure kind of felt freeing. I love him and the countless adventures that he and Pikachu and Team Rocket and all of the other cast have been on, and of course I'd love to see the Pokemon Company do more with him, maybe bring back movies. The movies are another thing I could talk about her video. But when they moved on to a new cast with Horizons like Liko and Roy and Freed, I felt like a part of my connection to Pokemon died when Ash left, you know? I feel like it definitely came at a good time because Scarlet and Violet was when I was, again, just thinking like, oh, Pokemon Company, this is unacceptable. I'll parrot the point that a lot of people like to say. Most profitable company or franchise in the world releases games like Scarlet and Violet, and they sell like gangbusters, you know? I understand that it is irrational of me to not watch Horizons because it doesn't star Ash and that crew, but you know, I just want at least one little like irrational thing. At least one irrational thing with this franchise. And for rounding it up on my opinions and experiences, Legends ZA was good. I wouldn't call it great, especially not with the Mega Dimension DLC. I think that kind of bogged the game down. But it was good. Baseline. Definitely better than Scarlet and Violet. I'm very impressed at how well it runs on the Switch 2. I'm definitely like, oh my god, what kind of spaghetti code did they make to have it run decently on Switch 1? I don't even want to know. I'll still say that Arceus is the superior Legends game overall. The real-time battle system is really cool, and like it said, like people were saying, it felt like you were having a battle in the anime. I don't know if they're going to keep this style or if they want to keep it reserved for spin-offs or not spin-offs because Legends games are mainline. If they want to like save it for other titles and keep very like new mainline Pokemon in turn-based, I would still be okay with that because I feel like after 30 years you can't get rid of turn-based like Pokemon. You can't get rid of it completely. And a solid gameplay loop in general. Yeah. I'm in a weird place with Pokemon. I kind of feel, past few years I've been feeling like disconnected with it. I think everyone goes through that period of like, oh, am I too old for Pokemon? And maybe I'm just kind of having that moment that I briefly had when I was a kid. It's hard because I'm very much in the past 6 or 7 years with Game Freak's games, I've overall not been very happy. Legends Arceus was a standout, and I'm very happy for that, but everything else is like, I really hope that in the future, the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, and Nintendo each give themselves the proper time to refine a game and have it spend longer in like, I guess, full development, not like conceptualization and R&D kind of stuff. Because as the games get bigger and games get more expensive to make, it feels like the budget and the resources for Pokemon, even when they get companies like Monolith Soft to help, it just isn't enough because there's just not that time for it. Again, I know it's not completely Game Freak's fault. Pokemon as a franchise is like a machine. All of the gears run in tandem, and if even one gear goes out of place, goes out of order, pops out, then the anime has to accommodate for it. The TCG has to accommodate for it. The merchandise, any of the promotional stuff, or like the marketing campaigns, would have to accommodate for it. So I know that people are like, oh, just delay it. And usually I'd agree. But for a juggernaut as big as Pokemon, it's not that easy. Honestly, if I talked about what I think could be improved with Pokemon as a fan and as somebody trying to be a bit more realistic, I could be here all day, a couple days even. But I want to end on a positive note. I still love Pokemon. There really is something for everyone in this franchise, and if you're not happy with one aspect of it, you can always try something else. Like, if you're not happy with the games, you can watch the show. If you don't care for the show, you can try out the trading card game. If you're not much of a card game person, you can read the manga, you can collect the merchandise, you can watch all the different shorts and other sort of shows or special spin-offs that the Pokemon company provides. Stuff like the Pokemon Concierge and all the Poketunes and stuff, all that. Like, again, there's something for everyone here. All I want to say is, to cap off the 30th anniversary, let's just all aim to be Pokemon masters.